do you know? Here comes good old George. Sure doesn't seem to be in any hurry, does he? I wonder where good old George is headed. Oh, now I see. He's headed to his favorite pastime, holding down a drink crate at his favorite hangout. Would you believe George will be graduating next year? I wonder if he's given any thought to his future. If he has, he doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. Say, it appears that George does have something going for him after all. He just might have a natural aptitude for mechanical work. You know, George might find a future for himself in the machine trades. Well, there goes George again. He sure is in a hurry for someone who doesn't know where he's headed. There must be some way to show George what kind of future he could have in the machine trades. George probably doesn't even realize that he could play an important part in making this space shot possible. Or help make it possible for this train to carry its cargo swiftly and safely throughout the nation. That's right. The machine operator, the machinist, and the tool and die maker make it possible for this train to carry its cargo safely and more efficiently because of their work. The creative talents of skilled workers designed and built the tools necessary to manufacture this machine. Skilled craftsmen are men with mechanical abilities and interests very similar to George's. This machine does the work required of 30 or more men, keeping the track in good condition. At the press of a button, the tamper will align and raise the track to a level position. It's not necessary anymore for men to work long hours, packing rock and gravel under cross ties to keep the track in place. As you can see, this operation must be exact. And that same exactness must be used in the manufacture of this equipment. An outstanding example of modern equipment used in the manufacture of the tamper is this tape-programmed drilling machine. It drills, taps, and mills, all under the control of a programmed tape. Instructions normally given on a blueprint to the machine operator are reduced to a number code, which is punched into the paper tape. The rolling tape operates the machine on a principle much like that of the old-type player piano. The result is a part with all necessary holes drilled, tapped, and milled in precisely the correct places to precisely the correct diameters, to precisely correct tolerances and finished smoothness. American industry depends on the skills of both machinists and machine operators to mass-produce thousands of products which we Americans take for granted, including this equipment used in every part of the United States and all over the world. To remain in operation, this company employs many machinists who constantly repair and maintain the production machinery, which finishes approximately 1,500 of the 4,000 parts required to manufacture their railroad maintenance equipment. In the process of manufacturing this equipment, a variety of jobs are performed. Rough castings, such as these heavy railroad wheels, are finished to precise specifications by machine operators. Accuracy is stressed in every step in the manufacturing process, and the machine operators who ensure this accuracy are respected and well-rewarded individuals. It's very likely that many of these machine operators started out just like George, with a mechanical ability, and felt the need to develop it through further training. In many plants, machine operators advance through several levels of salary, responsibility, and capability. A beginning operator needs instruction, performs the comparatively least skilled jobs, and is not expected to set up the machine. The intermediate level operator needs less help, can do machine setups, and performs the higher level tasks. The advanced operator can do machine setups, perform exacting tasks with little or no supervision, and rarely causes scrapping of workpieces due to error on his part. A craftsman who can get along with his fellow workers and gain their cooperation under his leadership can look forward to promotion to supervisory responsibility and more money. There are probably thousands of young people with a problem just like George's. Yet it can look pretty dark for those who let unseen opportunity pass them by. Like most of us, George would probably like to improve and better himself, but hasn't given a thought to doing anything about it. Good old George seems to be content with just thinking about bettering himself, without making any effort to bring it about. George has no plans for college. And yet, he doesn't seem to be worried about how he's going to make a living. I wonder if anyone has told George how difficult it is for an unskilled person to find a good-paying job these days. A guy with George's ability should start developing that talent while he's still in school. Not only does George seem to have the aptitude for this kind of work, but he also gets along well with other people. And that's important in all kinds of jobs. And it's especially true in the machine shop. I know, sounds like more school, and George thinks it's just another drag. Well, maybe George doesn't know what it's really like. Or maybe he doesn't even know he can start developing this talent while he's still in high school. Yes, a guy like George can start developing his mechanical abilities before he graduates. I wish we could show George it's not really a drag, and that the opportunity is right under his nose. That's right. There's probably a trade school right in George's neighborhood. Can you think of a better way for George to spend his time? At trade schools, students can attend part-time while still in high school, or they can attend full-time after graduation. Here, they receive the training basic for employment in industry, where the additional experience necessary to become a skilled machinist can be gained while earning a living. After a few short days at the trade school, this student is beginning a project that will acquaint him with many of the machines that are commonly found in industry. The first machine with which the student becomes familiar is the lathe. The major job of a lathe is to change the size, shape, or finish of a turning object. With attachments and adjustments, a lathe can also drill, finish drilled holes to exact size, and cut internal and external threads. The last three operations are called reaming, tapping, and threading. Another machine is the milling machine. It produces machined surfaces by gradually removing small amounts of metal from a raw stock, which is fed to a rotating milling cutter. One of the most often used machines is the drill press. Its main job is to cut round holes into or through materials. On On this particular project, the student will make a highly precise gear. After making this gear, the student will then turn it into a useful household item. The student begins by cutting the raw metal to the desired dimensions. Next, he finds the exact center. And through the center, the student will drill a hole. This hole is needed in order for the unfinished block of steel to be attached to the lathe. At the lathe, the cutting tool starts to eat away at the square edges of the block, causing it to take the desired form. Trade school students are taught to keep a constant check for accuracy, and the usefulness of the finished product will depend on this skill. Now we find the student at the horizontal milling machine. After being properly set up, the milling machine will cut the intricate teeth of the gear. As you can see, each cut must be exact in order for the gear to be a perfect machine part. After plugging up the hole in the center of the gear, we find the student at another horizontal lathe. He's cutting out the entire center of the gear. Perhaps by now, you've guessed that he's making a simple ashtray. Simple? Not really. For this ashtray could have been used as a gear similar to the one housed in the transmission of your family car. Here's another student at a trade school, and he's starting a different project. From this block of metal, he'll make an intricate mechanical nutcracker. You say you've never seen a mechanical nutcracker? Well, let's follow through the processes involved, and you will see. First, the student employs the use of the lathe to drill the hole that will eventually house the moving parts of the nutcracker. At the horizontal milling machine, the student is involved in cutting the block of metal to the exact specifications. These cuts must be precise in order to accommodate the parts of the nutcracker. Here the student is cutting away the rough edges of the block of metal. After making all of the intricate parts needed to complete the nutcracker, the student assembles the results of his efforts. Let's see if the nutcracker will really work. Yes, and as you can see, the results are most rewarding. Trade schools like this one are constantly building futures for those who see the need to develop their skills while still in high school and after graduation. Well, it looks like George still hasn't caught on to the idea that he needs to start making plans for his future. Maybe he feels as if he's too close to graduation and doesn't have a chance to start any more courses. Well, that's entirely possible, but he shouldn't give up. He can always develop his mechanical abilities after graduation. wonder if George knows about another training opportunity, the Technical Education Center. Technical education centers were designed to give the high school graduate a well-rounded technical education in many different fields, and the tool and die profession is no exception. This multi-million-dollar complex is designed to educate and train its students to satisfy the demands of modern industry. Here at Tech, the student has an opportunity to obtain the education which will be the foundation for his future in the machine trades. At Tech, the student starts his education with simple and basic practices that familiarize him with the general operation of the tool and die shop. This beginning student is using a surface grinder to reduce a part to precise dimensions. There is also a certain amount of classroom instruction required to give the student a good start toward becoming a tool and die maker, the most highly trained and skilled of all craftsmen in the machine trades. Here's where the student will find a need for all that math that he learned in school. The classroom is only a part of the process of becoming a precision tool and die maker. The student will be able to put that knowledge to work in operations like this, where a tool is disassembled and then made over, using exactly the same specifications. There are operations that involve the use of machines, just like those machines found in many industrial machine shops. Machines like this horizontal lathe, where the student not only learns to use the lathe, but also learns to use vital measuring devices, such as the micrometer. The word precision keeps coming up, and that's because it's a requirement that is a must in the machine trade. Tech students learn the importance of precision and learn to use those devices that measure precision. A basic knowledge of the making of metal is required of the tool and die maker, and at the metallurgy lab at Tech, the student learns basic knowledge of the properties of various metals. He learns what changes take place when metal is heated and when metal is treated in other ways. Tech offers its students the opportunity to learn the use of the latest modern machinery. This student is preparing a tape which will be used in a numerical control machine. The machine takes its commands from this punched tape. And as the information is given, the machine carries out the operations. More and more devices of this kind are being developed and introduced into modern industry to speed up the production of machine parts and die. The operator of this type machine must know the operations of all the machines commonly found in industry, as well as computer-type operations. The tech student becomes deeply involved in his chosen profession, and his work becomes a part of his life. He learns why the machinist is a highly skilled, highly respected, and highly rewarded individual. We've proven that the opportunity is there, if George would only take advantage of it. Surely George can't be content with just dreaming of the things he would like to have. All George needs to do is start developing his skills now, and someday soon those dreams will become a reality. Maybe it sounds too simple to be true, but it's happening all around him every day. George can't really afford to miss the opportunity that can have such a great effect on his life. Maybe George doesn't know how important the machinist's job really is. Maybe George doesn't know that industry is in desperate need of trained machinists. One such place is the tool and die shop, where skilled craftsmen are in constant demand. Skilled individuals who are capable of supplying the precision parts and tools demanded by industry to meet the ever-increasing standard of living. Skilled individuals who make precision tools for the tool and die industry. Machinery that transports people to all parts of the world. Machinery that builds the highways and skyscrapers. Machinists are in demand in almost every American industry. Machinists play an essential part of the operation of this plant, a plant operated for the purpose of manufacturing capacitors. That's right, capacitors. Machinists design, build, and maintain the machinery needed to mass-produce capacitors. Skilled men like Ed Sheely. Mr. Sheely is a method specialist, and his job is to solve the mechanical problems which might arise. Here, Mr. Sheely is discussing the creation of a new part to replace one that has caused problems in production. After deciding the course of action to follow, the machinist employs his skills and knowledge to perfect the new and improved part. Starting at the lathe, the machinist turns the raw metal to the desired specifications. The part, a shaft, must be precise in every way. Next, he uses the familiar milling machine where finishing touches are made. This operation is also performed to exact specifications. This machine can perform its job with unbelievable accuracy, but a skilled craftsman always makes the necessary measurements to ensure perfection. Now, with the finished shaft complete, Mr. Sheely is assured that the production problems will not arise. Problems that could mean a delay in the manufacture of the capacitors. Capacitors that are used in the electrical circuits of the giant rockets that are exploring the universe, television and radio receivers. The work of the machinist, machine operator, and the tool and die maker affects each of us every day. Yes, we depend on their skills to provide us with the new and intricate mechanical devices that our modern society has become so dependent upon. Skill that is now being learned in trade schools all over the state. Skill that is being developed and expanded in the many technical education centers now provided. Skill that is being well rewarded with high incomes. Skill that demands a professional pride by those who have chosen the machine trades as their profession. You know, a guy like George sure is lucky in a way. I mean, just think, with his mechanical ability, his interests, and his way of getting along with people, he could be a part of all this. But he is the one who must make the decision. A decision that can change his entire future. A decision that can determine the kind of car he'll drive, the size home he'll buy, the kind of life he'll be able to offer his wife and children. This is a decision that he must make now, and it could very well be the most important decision that he will ever make. Of course, George hasn't even thought about it. If someone would just tell George. Say, do you know George? Why don't you tell him?
Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Monday, I think. Oh, George. Learning about being a machinist and other trades. Man, I wish trade schools still existed. I think that they're amazing. Technical, most community technical colleges have taken on the trade school, but man, I really think that that's our future. And I think that there's a lot of jobs that could be gotten from that. Anyways, off the soapbox. I'm Skip Alzheimer. I collect old educational films and show them to folks like you. I've been doing it for more than 25 years. And given our times, I am doing this every day as an alternative to watching the news during lunch. And so thanks for joining me. So lots of films today. I'm going to try not to bring anybody down like I did on Friday. I showed a wonderful adaptation of The Lottery, Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, and I got very excited because somebody mentioned it, and I was like, yeah, I've got that. It's a really good film. But then I was like, oh, halfway through, I was like, it's a very intense downer film. So I apologize for that. This next film is about how our family life has changed. And this film was made, I believe, in the 50s. So just imagine how much more it has changed in the last 60 years. So enjoy.
75 years in the story of the family as a social institution is very short indeed. And yet, in that time, the pattern of family life in America has undergone radical changes. On a farm in the 1880s, family life followed a pattern which had been characteristic of America from early colonial times. 3 generations of a family lived and worked together. The father was head of the family in the fullest sense of the word. He had the primary economic responsibility for its survival, and he was the final source of authority. He was teacher as well as parent, and from him, his sons learned their vocation. In those days, a farm family was an economic unit complete in itself, held together by a division of labor among its members. The mother, in addition to her traditional responsibility for the rearing of children, had regular duties, such as the preparing of food. When she was not preparing meals, there were many other things to be done: churning butter, putting up preserves for the winter, and keeping the farmhouse clean. Her role in maintaining the family, both biologically and economically, was an important one, and it was clearly defined so far as the division of labor was concerned. Even grandparents fitted into the economic picture. They often lived with the family and participated in the work of the farm until incapacitated by old age or illness.
Rosemary, is Emmy up there with you? What was that, Mama? I said, is Emmy up there with you? I just can't keep track of that child. Yes, she's here. All right. I just wanted to know. Stop that this minute, Emma Jane. What are you trying to do? Ruin Mom's new dress?
I wasn't hurting nothing.
You mean anything?
Nothing. Grandpa says it that way.
You'd better behave yourself, young lady, or I won't make you a new dress.
Never?
No, never.
You will too. You got to. Just because you make all the clothes for the whole family, you think you're so smart.
Stop that and get out of here before I sew you right up on the machine.
You couldn't catch me even if you had a head start.
Emma is too young to have as definite a role in the division of labor as her sister Rosemary, but her older brother Franklin has already had his duties assigned. Chief among them is the care of the poultry. After harvest is over, all the children will go back to school at the little red schoolhouse 4 miles away, and Emma will have studies to keep her busy. Unpopular as she seems to be today, there's one person who is always glad to see her: Grandpa. Emma knows that she's the apple of his eye, and she has no hesitation in taking advantage of it. Grandpa is almost 70, but he is still of real help on the farm, particularly in the care of the livestock. In the American family of the past, religion played an important role in holding the family together as an institution. It was not exclusively an individual experience. The family participated in it as a group, in church and at home too. On Sunday afternoons, the father read aloud from the Bible.
The Lord will not suffer the soul of the righteous to famish, but he casteth away the substance of the wicked. He becometh poor that dealeth with the slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich. He that gathereth in summer is a wise son, but he that sleepeth in harvest is a son that causeth shame.
Fred sleeps in the harvest, Papa.
Emma, do not interrupt the reading of the scripture. Blessings are upon the head of the just, but the violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. The memory of the just is blessed, but the name of the wicked shall rot. The wise in heart will receive commandments, but a prating fool shall fall. He that walketh uprightly walketh surely.
Sunday was not given over exclusively to religion. Later in the day, visiting between families and friends was an approved kind of Sabbath recreation. On evenings during the week, the kitchen usually served as a living room, especially during the winter, because the stove was there. Although games were prohibited on Sunday, during the week, they were a favorite kind of recreation, with all three generations taking part. The children's school year was a short one, because all the children were useful on the farm. Consequently, parents often assumed the role of teacher, too. Rosemary is entertaining a suitor in the parlor. Courtship in the 1880s had stricter rules than today. Activities connected with the church, and especially Wednesday evening prayer meeting, gave courting couples their opportunities to meet.
Mama, will you play for us? Yes, daughter.
Their only real chance to be alone was in the home of the girl, where her parents could chaperone the meeting. This, then, was the American farm family of the 1880s, a group which was closely knit, economically as well as emotionally. It was a secure group, too, held together by strong religious belief and mutuality of work and of recreation. But the social forces that resulted from the Industrial Revolution were already at work, and this pattern of family life was to be changed dramatically and radically. The birth of a new century was not far off, and with it, a new way of life for the American family. With the growth of factories, the family as an economic unit with a division of labor began to disappear. Factories hired individuals, not families. Industrial expansion brought with it the growth of cities, and this too changed the traditional pattern of family life. Increasingly, families lived in apartments, not houses. This urban way of life brought with it greater individualism, more opportunities for self-expression, but at the expense of the family and home ties. But the greatest force of change in the traditional pattern of American family life was the changed status of woman herself. The feminist movement, which began in 1848, was originally directed against masculine domination. For many years, suffragettes campaigned to get the vote for women. But it was not until 1920 that women in all states of the Union could vote. But the factor of greatest change was the increasing employment of women outside the home, in factories, in commercial services, and in the professions. Industry offered her employment. At the same time, providing her with merchandise and services that undermined her traditional tasks. Today, most women work, not in protest against masculine domination, but out of economic necessity. New inventions in communication and ways of travel had an important impact on the traditional family pattern. In 1880, families had rarely traveled long distances, but with the spread of rail facilities, they began to travel more. The arrival of the automobile early in the century made it possible for families to move about even more easily, and history itself accelerated the trend. The stock market crash in 1929 ushered in the greatest economic depression in the nation's history. Whole families were uprooted, forced into movement in the search for work and a way of living. World War II weakened the stability of the family even further. Family groups were temporarily broken by the necessities of war. Many women went to work in factories to support the war effort, and often to supplement the family income. At the end of the war, families were reunited, but the social stability of the American family had been shaken by the increased freedom of women, depression, war, and population movements. Today, we have the smallest family unit in history and the least stable. Our divorce rate has greatly increased. Does this mean that the family as an institution is on the wane? In search of an answer, let us take a closer look at family life today, both on the farm and in the city. For example, plowing is done by machine. Although the farmhouse has not changed much on the outside, inside it's a different place. The Mrs. Harrington of today no longer has to spend all her time in the kitchen. Modern conveniences have given her more leisure. Even the Grandma Harrington of today does not have to work as she once did. Although there are still things for today's Grandpa Harrington to do, he is not nearly so important to the farm economy as he once was. There are children in this generation of Harringtons too, but they have their noonday meal at school. Today, children are less economically important on the farm, and so there's more time for education. Grace is seldom said before meals except on Sunday, but the Harringtons are still church members and attend services. Sunday afternoon on the farm today is very different from the past. It has become a time of recreation rather than religious observance. While John Harrington watches television, his wife goes to a social get-together of the ladies' club. Even recreation is no longer a family affair. The family doesn't enjoy things together as a unit, but separately, as individuals. While Grandpa reads his farm journal, Grandma upstairs in the bedroom listens to the radio and reads a woman's magazine. The children have permission to borrow the family car and are going to visit friends in a nearby town. What about a grandfather who lives in an urban setting? Joseph Wingfield is a widower. He's retired, and he lives alone in his own house. He's reasonably happy. But today's world is a young world, in which 60 is old, and Mr. Wingfield has a feeling of uselessness. His job is over. His children are grown. Anna, his daughter, is married and lives in her own home in the same town. The Norton family is typical of the modern urban family in America, babysitter and all. The small size of the average American family has given women more time for work and for leisure. This has resulted in wider individual expression and activity outside the home.
Hi, dear.
Oh, hello, Tom. I didn't hear you come in.
Have you been a good girl today?
Yes, Daddy.
I'll bet you have. I'll just bet you have.
You know, Tom, if you would take the children into the other room, I could get dinner in half the time.
Okay, come on, kids. We'll leave your mother alone. You know, tonight is her art class. And it's getting pretty late. You'd better go on ahead. I'll clean this up for you.
Well, that's nice of you, Tom, but I can get them started at least, if you can put the kids to bed.
Okay, but don't ever let it be said that old Tom Morton never held up art. Onward and upward.
Now, don't tease. You know a woman has to have some self-expression.
Come on, Janie. Off to bed. Your mother's going to express herself tonight, and I'm going to be your babysitter.
Oh, Daddy, you don't look like our babysitter.
Maybe not, but I'm going to be your babysitter tonight. Let's go.
Be a good girl and go right to bed. Mommy will be in to kiss you goodnight.
In the modern family, the division of labor is much less marked than it once was. Mr. Norton assumes some of the responsibilities once regarded as exclusively feminine. And in the Miller family next door, even the economic responsibility is divided, since Mrs. Miller has a regular job just like her husband. The women leave to attend their art class, while the men stay home and have a bridge game. One of the guests, Fred Small, is going to be married. Henry Enfield, a confirmed bachelor, good-naturedly calls Fred a fool for giving up his freedom for married life. But later that night, when Henry gets home to his lonely apartment, he wonders. The life of freedom was fine when Henry was 20 or even 30, but he's 45 now, and he feels pretty alone. A sense of frustration in middle age is a common experience for all people, and companionship is especially needed then. The loneliness and insecurity of cities, and the depersonalized life that urban people like Henry Enfield lead, have made the intimacy of marriage more desirable. From childhood on, human beings seek emotional security in established habit patterns, and the family habit is an essential one. The family as an institution has changed greatly. It may change even more, and its future is by no means determined. But it still carries out its essential functions: reproduction and the care and socialization of the young. As long as it maintains these functions, it will continue to flourish.
So we can extrapolate from there. There was lots to comment on. Gender roles, of course. The confirmed bachelor. That's funny. Yeah, I like films like that because they're definitely of a time. So that was mid-50s. And so, now we can look 60 years ahead and we can say, like, wow, look how much has changed in that time period. And what did they get right? What did they get wrong? It's kind of fascinating. This film was part of a series of things that were little shorts that were shown on Saturday morning television. And the idea was that Saturday morning television was mostly just ads for cereal, for toys, and TV shows that were ads for cereals and toys. So there was some legislation that kind of came about to try to keep that from happening. And so the networks did not want to have to kowtow to that, so they kind of introduced their own things, educational content that they inserted briefly. And so there was some interesting stuff that kind of came out during that time. So this is part of the Friends series. This is something that shows where different kids live in different parts of the United States. And ultimately, Schoolhouse Rock is one of those things that kind of came out of this. And I was actually reading an article that somebody was talking about that there was an act after Robert Kennedy was assassinated in '68 that Lyndon Johnson instituted this thing about violence in the media. And because of that, because there was mostly a lot of the content in the late 60s was superhero related stuff. So like Herculoids, Birdman, all those Hanna-Barbera cartoons that are basically just explosions and people screaming, which I actually kind of like. Out of that came Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo was this non-violent, goofy, interesting, mysterious show that actually then generated all these other kind of copycats. But it was a break away from the violence or the simulated violence. So anyways, but back to where we were. Friends in Atlanta, Georgia. Enjoy.
I'm Yolanda Williams. Let's be friends. I live in a moving city. I live in the southern part of the United States, in the state of Georgia. I'm working on the railroad all the livelong day. I've been working on the railroad just to pass the time away. Can't you hear the whistle blowing? I get so early in the morning. Can't you hear the captain shouting? Dinah, blow your horn. I live in Atlanta. Atlanta is located in the north-central part of Georgia, at the natural crossroads of the southeast. Atlanta is a transportation center. Trains, trucks, and planes are busy in Atlanta. Atlanta is like the hub of this wheel. Cities surround Atlanta like this tire surrounds the hub. The spokes are like transportation routes. Some of these routes are railroad tracks. Trains bring cargo to Atlanta. Much of this cargo transfers here to trains going to other cities. Some of these routes are highways. Trucks bring cargo to Atlanta.
B599 inbound Atlanta.
Much of this cargo transfers here to trucks going to other cities. Buses bring people to Atlanta. Many of these people transfer here to buses going to other cities. Some of these routes are in the sky. Airplanes bring cargo and people to Atlanta. Much of this cargo and many people transfer here to planes going to other cities.
Sorry, that just kind of ended on me. I forgot it has a short ending. Yeah, anyway, so there's a whole series of those, and we'll be showing more of those as we go along. They're pretty great. This next film is... this is How to Remember. I think that many of us are stuck in... one location, and so things that we used to use as location to give us memory of what happened in a day aren't really happening. So everything's kind of a blur. Like, when did I do that? Oh, I don't know. When did I clean the bathroom? Was it last week? Was it over the weekend? I don't know. Here's How to Remember.
Have you ever been faced with the problem of having to remember something? Perhaps something you were to buy at the grocery store, or the answer to some examination question, or the next step in a lab experiment, or the name of a person you wanted to introduce. It is important to be able to remember.
The thing I want to find out is how to remember. Names, dates, things like that, and something about them.
Names and dates and something about them. Then there are really two types of remembering.
Two types?
Yes. Let me use the typewriter, Jeff. I'll show you. There is remembering in general, the idea of a thing. And there is remembering word for word, memorizing. Whenever you want to remember anything, you have to decide which you need to do.
I get it. I remember word for word things like names, dates, formulas, and vocabulary words for my French course. And I also remember the general idea of things like stories, lives of great men, and history.
Right. And now you're ready to learn how to remember.
That's what I want to find out. How?
Well, Jeff, let's see. What's that book?
It's a poetry book.
Let's look at it. Stop. Let's hear you read the one on that page.
The tide rises, the tide falls. The twilight darkens, the curlew calls. Along the sea sands, damp and brown, the traveler hastens toward the town. And the tide rises, the tide falls.
Can you remember that much?
I don't think so.
Well, do you know what it means?
No.
Why don't you start by trying to get the meaning of the poem? What's it all about?
Well, it's about the tide rising and falling.
And what else? Better look at that poem again. The twilight darkens, the curlew calls. What about that?
Oh. Well, it's getting darker. And there are birds, curlews along the shore calling. Now I'm beginning to understand.
Do you remember it?
Sure. It's about a traveler walking along the shore at sunset toward the town.
Good. Now that you understand, you do remember. Understanding is the first step to remembering. Let's put that down. How to remember. First step, understand the material.
That is a good way to remember things. I'll make sure I understand anything I expect to remember from now on. But I'd still like to remember more than that about the poem.
Well, let's look at it again. Notice the poem has 3 stanzas. We know the first stanza is about twilight along the shore. What about the second?
Well, it tells how it becomes night.
And the third?
What's the next morning? I see. It goes from twilight to night to the next morning. Well, that's sort of an overall view. And I remember more about the poem.
Right. That's another step to remembering. We'll put it down, too. Get an overall view.
Say, that does help to remember it.
Now, as I read, try to picture what I'm saying. The tide rises, the tide falls. The twilight darkens, the curlew calls. Along the sea sands, damp and brown, the traveler hastens toward the town. And the tide rises, the tide falls.
That part of the poem suddenly seems so real.
That's because you visualized it, and that will help you remember, too. Try to visualize the things you want to remember.
I think I can remember it now. Let's see. The tide rises, the tide falls. The twilight darkens, the curlew calls. Along the... Oh, what is that? Oh, sure. Along the sea sands, damp and brown.
How can you remember that?
Well, the beach we go to has damp brown sand along its shore. I used to play in the sand a lot.
Now, try the poem again. The twilight darkens.
Twilight darkens. The curlew calls. Along the sea sands, damp and brown, the traveler hastens toward the town. Say, that helps. I'll remember the sand now.
There's your next step in remembering. Form associations. There are many aids to remembering. Notice in your poem how the last words rhyme. Falls, calls, brown, town. And see how many times the phrase, the tide rises, the tide falls, is repeated. These are all memory aids. You know another sort of memory association from your science work. Can you remember the colors of the spectrum in order?
Red, orange. Oh, yes, Roy G. Biv. You make up a name out of the first letters of the colors. Roy G. Biv. Then you can remember the colors.
That's right. This kind of association helps you remember.
It sure does. But say, let me try that poem again. Along the sea sands, damp and brown, the traveler does something toward the town. I remember the idea. I can even see the picture, but, well, I just can't remember the words. Hastens toward that town, that's it. If I can just get past that, the rest comes to my mind.
That seems to be a key idea. Maybe there are more of them in the poem. Let's look. How about twilight darkens, traveler hastens, darkness settles, morning breaks, day returns. Those seem to give the most help.
I don't think I'll get stuck if I remember those key ideas.
A good point. Pick out key ideas. This step is essential to efficient memorizing.
Say, following those rules, I can remember anything.
Not everything. You must forget useless information so you can remember useful information more easily. Wait. Don't forget one last important thing. If you want to recall readily, you must repeat and use what you have learned.
I guess you really have to know how to remember in order to remember well. These rules should help a lot. Let's see if I can remember the rules. Understand the material. Get an overall view. Visualize. Form associations. I've plenty of associations to remember those rules with. That typewriter going by itself will surely stick in my mind. Well, those 4 rules are important for remembering the general idea of something. When you want to memorize, there are 2 more steps. Pick out the key ideas, and then repeat the material frequently, using it. You know, I think I memorized that poem with those rules. Let's see. The tide rises and the tide falls. The twilight darkens, the curlew calls. Along the sea sands, damp and brown, the traveler hastens toward the town. And the tide rises, the tide falls.
In the same rules, Jeff went on to memorize the rest of the poem. And he learned to remember many other things. Now he no longer has trouble with names when he wants to introduce people. You'll find, too, that it helps in your studies and in your social life to learn how to remember.
So that was a classic Coronet film where you have a protagonist, in this case Jeff, who's sitting in his room or sitting at a desk, and he's kind of basically in conversation with a narrator who is not in the room. It's kind of voice of God, and he is then doing cutaways to other things that help him learn whatever he's learning. Super cheap budget move. One actor basically who has speaking parts. The rest of them are, there's no sound. And they might even use stock film material from other Coronet films. That has happened often. Coronet was like the big Hollywood studio of educational films. I think they were cranking out like 2 films a week. In a suburb of Chicago. And so you'll see a lot of the same actors, a lot of the same costumes, or basically the same sweater keeps showing up again, the Coronet sweater, the same sets. It's kind of fascinating. This next film is a jam handy film, but it's made well past the magical jam handy period. This is well into the 70s, but it's great. Talks about the magic of appliances in the kitchen, and is a good tie-in to our changing family life. This is Home is What You Make It.
Ever since Eve, woman's role has been that of homemaker. The frontier home was in her care, while pioneers went forth to tame the wilderness. Home is in her competent hands today, too, as men keep the wheels turning in the workaday world. And home will be in her capable hands tomorrow, as celestial pioneers chart the frontiers of the future. And as every woman knows, your home is what you make it. The American homemaker has always tried to make her home a better place to live in, but her job wasn't easy. She washed and rinsed by hand, hung her clothes on a line, and then sprinkled them before standing up to the joys of ironing, often with unplanned results. Consider food keeping. When she needed ice, she put a card in the window, then waited for the iceman. Convenience? Well, actually, a convenient place to keep a melting block of ice. Occasionally, she had to remind her husband to empty the pan. The good old days. And dishwashing? That was a 3 times a day chore. And take cooking. Old-fashioned wood stoves, with all their nostalgic inconvenience, didn't do much to lighten the homemaker's day. But just as there was adventure in homemaking, so too was there adventure in appliance making. That was true in the good old days, and it's equally true when it comes to the attractive, reliable, and versatile appliances of today. Whether for gentle home laundry care, cooling and comfort conditioning, out of sight, out of mind dishwashing, quick, compact disposal of trash, taste-tempting cooking, or dependable food keeping, today's homemaker has the final word. That's why manufacturers and dealers are concerned that you know how to buy, how to use, and how to get good service for your appliances. You have a distinct advantage over your mothers and grandmothers because you can select appliances that give you more for your money than ever before. When it comes to selecting, of the many makes and models available, which one to buy should be governed by your knowledge of how to buy. Selecting an appliance is based first on the appliance need. Take refrigerators. You should not buy simply because the model is short or tall, wide or thin, looks roomy or appears high style. Rather, you and your husband should consider such factors as the present and future size of your family, the size of your home, the features you need, and of course, what you can afford to pay. Let the salesman know how much kitchen space you have, your shopping habits, and food preferences. He may ask you how often you entertain. Do you shop once a week, twice a week, every day? Do you buy a lot of frozen foods? Do you like to put up frozen foods yourself? If you don't use frozen foods in quantities requiring an individual freezer, then a good-sized freezer section in the refrigerator may fill the bill nicely. How to buy is a question that need not baffle you. Not when you have such on-the-spot help as a consumer buy guide. Here are listed the important features, specifications, and requirements of each appliance. Such shopping aids help you compare brands and models. They help you buy only the product that fills your needs best. Seals of approval by independent testing groups are clearly shown, indicating built-in safety factors. And of course, you want to know about installation, operation, care and cleaning, and how to get the most out of your appliance before you buy. Make sure that you know exactly what protection you're entitled to. Clear, easy-to-read warranties that don't lose and confuse you in fine print let you know at the time you buy just what you're getting. And when service is needed, you want to know where you can get good service by trained people. Today, reputable dealers and franchised service agencies provide such service. In addition, some appliance manufacturers offer a unique telephone information and assistance service. A toll-free call from anywhere in the United States, day or night, brings you information concerning the use and care of your appliance, as well as where to get service if needed. Knowing how to buy and what to buy are what put the right products in your home, the ones that meet your needs best. This is your domain. Here's where you spend important but fewer hours each day. The safekeeping of foods is why you have a refrigerator. Whether fresh foods or foods frozen at the height of freshness, storage convenience is a top factor in selection. Foods filed at your fingertips. A place for everything. And everything in its place. Plenty of storage space, wide shelves, adjustable, everything lit up. And why worry about defrosting in freezer or refrigerator? True no-frost convenience rates high in deciding what and how to buy. The cooking of food for its best appetite and taste appeal is why you have a range. Yours is the advantage of fast preheat and of balanced heat for roasting and baking. And should you be busy elsewhere, your oven will automatically start and stop so that dinner is ready whenever you wish. All controls are easy to see and set. Safety precautions? It's just common sense to be careful with all appliances. Meanwhile, your laundry is done quickly, economically, and most important, automatically. A choice of cycles gives every washable fabric proper care, including one with an important cool down for permanent press. Your clothes are dried without hurting delicate items, again with special cool down for permanent press, with drying time controlled electronically. Because you knew how to buy, yours is a home laundry center with features that really meet your needs. You rule your domain in cool comfort. Enjoy a bountiful ice supply. Never again need you struggle with stubborn ice trays. Enjoy new adventures in range-top cooking. You know that homemaking is a 7 days a week affair. You may have roast beef today or broiled chicken tomorrow. Small wonder that you appreciate a forgettable oven when it comes to oven cleaning. Just close the door and set the controls. The oven cleans itself automatically. clean as a whistle results without any drudgery. Say goodbye to drudgery, too, with quick trash disposal. In one compact package. Your food waste is washed quickly down the drain. No drudgery either when it comes to dishes. You can enjoy once-a-day dishwashing, loading dishes as you please, knowing everything will be washed sparkling clean and thoroughly dried. Total washability. Just press a button and the dishes are done. Yours is the confidence born of knowing your appliances, of following your owner's manual, and of understanding how to get service if you need it. Today's homemaker controls the kitchen and the remainder of the home, too. Not the other way around. You are the manager of your home, not its servant. Life in the space age, the appliance industry will continue its lifelong love affair with you, the American homemaker. There'll be new departures that herald even more exciting adventures in homemaking. New freedom from kitchen chores. New horizons in food preparation and home laundry care. Innovations that will continue to offer more quality, value, safety, and versatility for your appliance dollars. But tomorrow's promises have their roots in today. The world we live in, here, now, where it's at. Your home is what you make it. And the appliance industry, offering products that you can buy with confidence, stands ready to help you make it better, more convenient, more economical, more satisfying than ever before.
So I think that was 1969. The Roman numerals were too small for me to look at, but it's interesting. It's the pacing of it and the jokes are totally 1950s Jam Handy. It's like they didn't really update for what was happening outside in the world. I mean, the fashions reflected a little bit in her dress, but you know, it's definitely not hip. And maybe that's the deal. It's like, you know, they were like, we want this to be conservative housewife. We don't want there to be anything else. You know, we don't want to reflect the new hippie generation that's in the new pop generation. I'm not sure, but that's my guess. The feeling of it and the pacing of it really reminds me of what was happening, in those jam handies in the 50s. All right, thanks so much for joining us. I added a new thing to the list of things that you can do to help YouTube viewers. Please like and subscribe. That somehow helps. You know, when Google is in control of who makes it to heaven, the number of likes that I have might help that. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure what the metric of that is, but it seems to be things that everybody else is asking for, so go for it. If you like what you saw, you can go to avgeeks.com. There's thousands of films online there. Also, Patreon is a great place to donate. But also just telling people that we're doing this is really great, and I very much appreciate your time and your comments and your eyeballs. I have one last thing I'm just going to leave you with, and I left this to the end because it will probably bring down a copyright hammer and we'll stop the stream, but I don't know. But anyways, earlier I mentioned what was happening in the 60s as far as Saturday morning cartoons and the violence and the screams and explosions. And this is Herculoids, which has a very thin plot to get to the explosions and the laser blasts and the screaming. I really, really dig this. So here's a Herculoids episode. Enjoy.
Hanna-Barbera's World of Super Adventure, featuring the most fantastic collection of spectacular superheroic stars ever assembled. They will take you on adventures in space, meeting strange creatures, to exotic lands and fantastic flights of fancy, to jungle planets and mysterious invaders, to prehistoric times and super forces, to modern winged avengers, to giant, terrifying creatures against primitive power. In space, land, sea, and air, it's a variety of stars. Mighty, musical, athletic, extraordinary, from funtastic to the fantastic. Where amazing weapons, men and robots meet in combat in the far-out reaches of the universe. Dedicated to protecting the peace, these fantastic heroes defend the weak, right the wrongs, and battle against the forces of evil everywhere. And now it's takeoff time for the gathering of the greatest, Hanna-Barbera's World of Super Adventure.